Okay, excellent. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Hemp Advisory Committee, for being present today. And I'm glad to see we have attendees out there. I will just start the meeting off by reminding everybody to please disable any AI recording functions and be mindful that public comment will be towards the end. Just to put something in the chat about that. Right now, the chat's turned off for the public, and we will convene with hearing from the advisory committee. And towards the end, as time allows for public comment, just go turn the chat back on. And feel free to use that or raise your hands during the meeting. So welcome everybody to our end of the year advisory committee meeting. I want to welcome everybody again. It's been a pretty good year. I'll talk about, updates of how the year went, what the program is seeing. Probably what a lot of people are interested in is what they're considering for possible rule changes, which is really the primary function of the
Brian, can
advisory.
you speak louder? Your voice
Yeah.
is very low.
Can you hear me now? I don't think I would close my mic. Is it better?
I don't know somehow. Yeah, it's okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but try to speak louder.
Okay. I will start the meeting off with a welcome from our division director, Wanderad Gabru. Go ahead, Wanderad.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of the department, and I would like to welcome, as Brian mentioned, this is our second and the last for the year. And fortunate, hopefully it's fortunate because lots of things has happened at the federal front in the last, I think this last month and then this month, and then ongoing. I think we'll also have an opportunity later on to basically, bring a kind of summary overview of what's going on in our agenda. And then also very recently, I think that today, also the federal rescheduling of marijuana on discussion, what that impacts. I think definitely do not have any impact directly, but overall, the cannabinoid industry also will have, its own, evolution or transition in a way. But overall, here in Colorado, it's been quiet. From in legislative front, it's been quiet. We are really trying to refine and then fine tune our program in a way of checking rules and then some adjustment which we have observed that particularly our enforcement has been really hand-tied. Some definition and then scope need to be refined. I think we'll bring that to you to the advisory committee meeting when we are really put in the nail, pin down the real change that we are proposing before we make any progress and then reach out to stakeholder broadly. We'll bring that to you. But currently it's on discussion level yet, and then we have not started to redlining our rule yet. Otherwise, the program front, Brian will provide an overview, and hopefully we'll have enough time to go through, reflect, and then how to really contribute our part here in Colorado towards the federal legislative, and then what really makes sense for him to advance, and then where should we really put our we are not advocating, but definitely your input is really very helpful in terms of reflecting the industry all across the hemp supply chain. I think having said this, thank you again for your commitment time to serve in the advisory committee and advance hemp. So with this, I will basically pass on to the chair, and then we'll talk later. Thanks.
Thank you, Wanderad. I wanted to thank everybody for being here today. Before we kind of let Wonderad go into the agenda in a couple minutes, I think there's an obvious 800-pound gorilla in the room, that federal appropriations language, and I think we're going to talk about that today. A lot of people are uneasy. That's obvious. I think folks are trying to figure out what it means for hemp, for Colorado hemp farmers, for hemp businesses. But I think the supply chain, a lot of the aspects that we've been looking at for the last 7-8 years, it's a real concern, not just mine. A lot of teams I've been talking with voice it to me every day. If I'm being honest, I see this as course correction, one the industry's been heading towards for a while. I think I'm not the only one. I think that's this committee's job to help the state navigate what's coming over the next 11 months. But whether you agree with it or not, what matters is the committee's focus, what's actually happening on the ground. And that's the job that I think this committee was created to do. I think farmers, Ryan, farmers need steadiness. Businesses need our attention. They need attention. Consumers need confidence. Safety is still the biggest precedent here. I don't see our role as reacting to the policy or taking sides, whether we like it or not. I see it as kind of a team that's here to help people understand what's actually happening. As a team that's supposed to give the state of Colorado a clear read on how the industry is responding. And that's going to be a change. I think if we say it plainly, I think the last few years, the Hemp Advisory Committee has been kind of just stagnant. There hasn't been a lot of policy movement. So the roles have been more kind of honorary, maybe that's not the right word, than engaged. We show up, we hear updates from Brian and Wanderad, we listen to the stats. Oftentimes they're showing us the same things. And that's really been the cadence. A month ago, that changed. I think we're moving into a period where this committee is going to be asked for guidance again, like real guidance at the governor's office, at the attorney general's office. That's important. I think the guidance can come from one perspective because hemp isn't, or that it can't come from just kind of one perspective. Hemp isn't just one industry anymore. It's vast. It's seed, it's grain, it's fiber, it's flour, it's manufacturing, it's synthetic cannabinoids, all different kind of realities, all under the same kind of umbrella. Today, I'm going to listen because I want to get caught up, ask questions, kind of engage with the committee, because I think showing up has been enough in the past. I don't think that's the case moving forward, at least not the next year. But staying grounded in the facts, our job is to help bring clarity to a very noisy environment right now. And I think that's where this group has always added value. I mean it. I say this with pride. Colorado has always been kind of the stabilizing role in the U.S. hemp sector. We set early regulatory and academic and scientific standards. We've always been that voice. We've been consistent when other states have been trying to find their footings. I think we're getting back to that. I mean, if we think about where the HAC has helped, we built and maintained Colorado's hemp cultivation framework. We provided regulatory stability when kind of the other states paused. We really supported that transition from USDA approved state plant to kind of state plans. We did it without really disrupting the operators. But we've also been kind of a voice for market credibility. Has it always played out the way we thought? I don't know, but we try to be predictable. We try to have transparency. We try to have oversight. I'm just reminding the group of that because that matters right now. Staying grounded matters. That's what this committee's here to do. Stick to the facts. Keep a clean process so people can revisit it. We all know that the committee's advisory. We don't write the rules. We don't help, but we do. Yeah, we help shape them through support of CDA staff. They're the ones that take the real world input and then they lock them in. They change the rules. They draft the outreach to the commissioner. The commissioner goes and meets with the ag commission They bring forward a recommendation, they vote on it. It goes into a formal notice process. It goes to what Wonderad was just talking about with redline rulemaking, then the legal review, and then it's final. We're heading towards those red lines. I think the earlier this committee kind of surfaces on those practical issues, testing, inspections, timelines, I think the more useful our input is going to be for those red lines, especially once they're published. Because once they're published, that flexibility drops. We should be staying ahead of that process. We should be staying grounded on how all this actually works. That clock is ticking. We have 330 days. We have to stay aligned with the new federal guidelines. We have to make sure that there's clarity, that it's practical, but we have to be disciplined with it. I don't think my chair role is any different than any role here. And it's definitely not to offer conclusions. It's to make sure that we're kind of starting from a good point and we're sharing factual baselines. Wanderad said he's going to walk us through what that federal appropriations bill is, what it actually means, and just as importantly, what it doesn't. Brian's going to follow up with the end of the year program updates, including kind of the potential rule changes. We also have some recruitment that we have to do for the HAC seats that are expiring in July. I'm going to be sad to see a couple people going. But after that, for everybody who's chiming in online, that's when we open the floor for a committee discussion. But there's also, I think, going to be a public comment. So if you're tuning in, I really do encourage you to use that as an opportunity. Right now, the input matters. I think our job is in the coming months to help bring clarity to the changes that are happening, separating what's actually changed from what people are assuming is changing to how it's actually changing. And that clarity is how this group particularly is going to bring value. There are real constraints. Processors are still facing constraints, farmers, constraints. The pressure is real. The fundamentals haven't really changed, though. We're growing a plant. We have to bring kind of the community together. I think Colorado's in a different position than many of the states. We have strength in fiber. We have strength in grain. We have research capacity. We have strong compliance with many of the cultures involved with this plant. This committee actually has an opportunity to help kind of outline a realistic path forward that gives businesses the best chance to succeed. I mean, our work for the last couple of years, really since 2020, has been custodial. It's maintaining continuity. I think that phase is ending for this committee, at least for the next year. Like I said, what comes next really is going to require more engagement from us. But the responsibility kind of belongs to the entire committee, as long as we're grounded, as long as we're fact-driven, as long as we're pragmatic. I think Colorado is going to serve as that reference point for the other states kind of navigating this same transition. I don't want to go too far into it. I can talk all day about this, but I just wanted to thank everybody. I think we have some agenda items with Wanderad, so I really appreciate everybody being here. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. And I'll move on to Wanderad, who is going to provide us insight on the appropriations bill and some other things. Go ahead, Wanderad.
Do you see my screen?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Yeah, I see it.
Oh,
Okay.
excuse me. Yeah, there it is. Okay, got it.
Okay. What I will be sharing is just a high level, just overview, assuming that because most of us, if not all of us, have the opportunity to go through, but to really facilitate the discussion and then what our concern, and then what the next step would be in here. As we know, basically the Agricultural Appropriation Act, within Agricultural Appropriation Act, it was enacted, and therefore it really has the good advantages for agriculture, unlike other federal agencies. And then within agriculture as well, there are certain parts which are not appropriated for the full year, and therefore this is really one good aspect of the appropriation, so that at least the agency and the programs will continue. And then, of course, reauthorization for extending 1 year for Farm Bill, that will also basically authorize to maintaining the status quo with the previous year's allocation. What basically it included was insertion of hemp within the appropriation bill. The appropriation bill was basically the primary objective and timing was to open the federal government, because it was shut down, as we all know, and therefore there was really rush in it, and then therefore there was no really discussion made on all the changes that were proposed and then that were included in the bill, which defined hemp, but with no discussion. And as I earlier mentioned, as 1 year transition period implemented, and then while several of the House and Senate level legislature have concern and then want to amend, but because of the time crunch, there was none. Otherwise, there was no really full consensus on the bill, which is, I think, an opportunity to go back and remedy a number of areas. What has changed? I think the most important element that's changed is basically defining hemp and then separating industrial hemp from the cannabinoid. I think this is a positive in our view. We have also in our state plan, in our when we engaged as comment for 2018 Farm Bill, Colorado, we had a very clear recommendation of bifurcating, because it really helped fiber and feed and grain, all these to be separated from cannabinoid, and then they can be less regulated, and therefore there are different tools that we can implement, including monitoring the varieties, and then the varieties to be used, particularly from certified seed. So this is a positive element. The other element which we consider is also really beneficial for is including total THC. The previous Farm Bill, the hemp was only describe about THC, and then it doesn't really clearly specify either the tool or the method to use, which is gas chromatography, or the HPLC, basically, that do not decarboxylate. The decarboxylation automatically account for THC, but the other methods don't account automatically. But in any case, now I think this really addressed, and that's also for Colorado. That's how we have been using and then interpreting as what hemp is. Hemp is 0.3 any cannabis plant less than 0.3% in dry weight total THC, and then we use also decarboxylation. We recommend in our state lab we use the decarboxylation method, but others now with CDPH certified lab basically we use, but it doesn't make any change because we account for total THC. There is no THCA in the Colorado's hemp program, and then the Colorado's definition of hemp. So no change, but this definition definitely adds clarity for some actors and then for some states as it is relevant. The other thing is also what hemp is not is anything that's grown from seed exceeding 0.3, which is more clarity, and then also intermediate derived products also should be 0.3 THC, which is very, very difficult for particularly here in Colorado. CDPH regulate extraction and the processing of hemp, and then therefore this is very, very difficult to achieve, because through the extraction and then concentration, then most likely and then definitely, then the THC amount within that, intermediate product or intermediate extract would definitely be higher. And therefore, that makes it very difficult for any transaction from extractor to final product manufacturer, and then in all these aspects, because it's defined at 0.3%, and that will not be considered as hemp. The other one that's also very problematic is the final product should not exceed 0.4 milligram THC per container, which is also not the case for almost legitimate hemp businesses, hemp broad spectrum extract, and then all others, particularly because this addresses container. The current in container level is significantly larger. And therefore, these changes are some of the change. And then I would say most of the major change, but also, of course, in the cannabinoid space, that also has a number of other changes in the appropriation bill. The concerns raised are a number of concerns, which the bill did not really address. What it want to address is only address the loophole of the cannabinoid, the delta 8, and then the manufactured and then chemically modified and changed cannabinoid product. Otherwise, other than that, still there are lots of other changes that basically are not addressed. Number one is there is no clear exemption from grain for grain and fiber. What this means is that the requirement, it's defined differently, but what does that definition really give it? It need to exemption of testing requirement, or how this could be achieved is still it's left vague, and therefore that will, unless or otherwise USDA just regulating cultivation comes with different options, but currently the legislation really put it in a general term and then in a vague term without clear guidance. And then the other, similar to this, is no exemption for grain and fiber, and then removing testing for use of certified seed. This can be, currently we are using under the provision of performance-based sampling, but that's also, each state have their own different methods, different approach, which make it very difficult for the industry, for the R&D, for seed producers, because it is interpreted and then implemented differently. Therefore, there is no harmonized way. That's also another area, for the future to be addressed. The other one is, the concern is the THC, even in the textile and then in the industrial, industrial destined or for hemp grown for industrial use, sometimes the THC may be a little higher, some varieties for various purposes, and therefore these do not really give exemption, although it is not, for to be used for cannabinoid extraction or the chemical industry, but it may also go. Therefore, the risk for farmers' risk still remains the same. And then that basically takes us to the other discussion of, why not, increasing the THC limit for the in general for hemp. The other thing is standardization of the testing tools. Most likely, this could also be handled by USDA as it pertains to the technical description. But with the current law and then how it operates, most likely that it will be left for each state to either to use the gas chromatography or the decarboxylation method and the non-decarboxylation method. The decarboxylation method basically is the most preferred because that will really streamline the whole process of THCA and the acid form, and then this discussion. That's also one area that basically is recommended. The most important concern is the 0.4 milligram per container. I think this is hopefully it will be adjusted, and then there are also various requests and then recommendations coming to basically improve this one, increase this as well. The other element that the bill also give, in principle that's correct, but FDA has really shown significant inefficiency in the taking time and not really being proactive in a way of classifying CBD, and therefore this is now even adding more problem that how about other cannabinoids, and then the bill also basically classified it as THC and then intoxicating cannabinoids, and then having others having similar effect. So that institutional capacity, and then you put a significant challenge, and then the other thing is also they are given only 90 days to come up with this classification. That's also a major concern. And then stakeholders are also recommending. I think we have seen also actual movement from stakeholders jointly working and then proposing policy recommendation, and then for federal rules, and then so having an expert task group is recommended, and then allocating federal support for research and development. Currently, there is none or targeted funding for hemp, and then this need to be provided. The other is all cannabinoids, particularly cannabinoids, intoxicating cannabinoids, other than CBD, and the known non-intoxicating cannabinoids will move to regulated marijuana space. I think that will also, or totally ban, as it currently stand on marijuana is standing as one, and therefore it is totally banned. Therefore, or it is left for each state. I think for our state, it is already streamlined, and then it doesn't really have any impact. So I think the anticipated impact is all cannabinoid moving from hemp to regulated marijuana or banned. Most likely it will be to marijuana, and then significant hardship to already existing industries, especially in the manufacturing, and then especially the beverage, and then currently also the state won't, and then is planning legislature, and the stakeholders are really working to expand and then increase THC amount per serving. I think that will also, we don't know, where it's going. Either it will remain a state, and then that will also be more complex interstate, across the state board, and then trade as well. While the legislation responds to some of those issues, as I said, THC, total THC, which is good, and then various other issues, including defining industrial hemp from cannabinoid, it is significantly in short of addressing lots of other issues. And then one still recommendation, Colorado, we want to also move forward is with 1% increasing the 0.3 to 1% THC. That will significantly remove the burden from the stakeholders. I think the whole issue is that currently various hemp groups are working with legislature to address the gap. There are lots of others at bills are being introduced, or at least circulating, within stakeholder. I think that's a positive and a good sign. But these need to be coordinated. Otherwise, basically, still, it will not really address entire supply chain or issues. Most are asking to establish task force to come up with recommendation. I think this would definitely be agreed upon industry actors, and then multi-state also engagement. We believe that this will address will cover most issues, as we have also tried to do here in Colorado. The other thing of bifurcating industrial and fiber, and then the cannabinoid, and then intoxicating cannabinoid. I think this is really good. There is some footing on this aspect, while CDA here in Colorado will be basically engaged on cultivation of industrial and then cannabinoid, but cannabinoid will be definitely go to the MED or CDPHE. I think we'll see on how it goes. But intoxicating cannabinoid will automatically go to the marijuana space. And then clear role to administer institutional capacity, particularly at federal level, where FDA is in one aspect, and then the DEA for the marijuana currently, and then USDA for the cultivation. And then how that really streamline, and then how that translate to the state level. That's also an area, and provide substantial financial support that need to be done. And then there is an opportunity to fix, currently, and then everything could also be fixed in the Farm Bill if and then when it comes. Currently, still another year in the making. Otherwise, there is also very recent rescheduling of marijuana in the discussion. I think this is what I have, and then I think we'll open up for any conversation and then any discussion. So, yeah, this is just what I put together to help start the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Wanda. Did you want questions now, or did you want to wait for the discussion period?
I think I would probably, for our best use of our time, if you go ahead and then we'll open up if Aaron, you agree with. I think that's, or else.
Okay. I agree. I've got some information to get through. I'll try not to spend too much time on statistics and more on, what's happening, but I should be able to get through that and leave ample time for open discussion for the committee. So with that, I will start my presentation. Can everybody see it? All right. So again, this is our second committee meeting of the year. Just for those who don't know, the authority of our program includes providing a legal platform on specific land areas to cultivate hemp. We do require planting and harvest reporting, inspection, sampling, and of course, compliance and enforcement. Currently, the program does just consist of myself, Jessica, and support from Wanderad. Going through the roll call, I believe that we have Bill, Alex, Aaron, Ryan, Rebecca, Sasha, Derek. Lathan, did I see you on there? Lathan, are you present? Maybe not. I know I saw Thomas and John. Are you present? I'm not sure I see you. Okay. Anyway, we definitely have a quorum. Today I'll talk about some of the usual updates: registration, inspection, testing, THC compliance, potential rule changes, and recruitment of HAC representatives. As you can see, in the last couple of years, we have kind of leveled out. We went down a little bit this year from last year, but a little bit better than 2 years ago. The one thing that has changed is we've had an increase in acreage over the last couple of years. Primarily, that was started by fiber hemp, but this year we also had a significant increase in cannabinoid production as well, outdoors and indoors. These are the intended use for the last 2 years. You can see that CBD went up as a bigger share from what last year, more similar to it was a couple of years ago. But both fiber and CBD did see increases this year. And as far as non-compliant hemp's concerned, we didn't really see any changes in the percent of registrants above the allowable THC. level, the percentage of registrants decreased for negligent hemp, or above 1% this year. There were more samples analyzed by CDPHE and CDA this year than last year. And we also, on our own, increased our sampling. I'll get into that a little bit later, but mostly we really focused on indoor grows, indoor cultivations, cannabinoid growers. And of course, random risk was, selected for randomly and for people who had past compliance issues. And we did increase the percentage this year basically by selecting all indoor grows to inspect this year. The outcome inspections, most were compliant. We do always find people that did not plant or their crop failed upon inspection. A common problem is record keeping. We do have people that are missing planting or harvest reports. Reporting varieties and individual lots still seems to be confusing for some folks. They'll put more than one variety on a planting report, and some people won't report all their varieties. We found that in a couple of cases, and we are still working very closely with registrants and FSA to ensure that their crops are certified. They had a deadline of July this year, but they can still report late till July next year. We had a couple instances where there was an apparent failure to cooperate with inspection. We dealt with that by painstaking communication with the registrant, and in one case, a administrative search warrant. And the last piece of that I see is we do have people that fail to pay their inspection fees. It is in rule that you must pay all fees for inspection. However, those end up getting sent to collections, the ones that we don't collect. So about compliance, we have been issuing civil penalties for high THC offenders this year, and beginning last fall. We started having a CDA inspector or myself, somebody from the program, be on site to ensure that high THC hemp lots, those above 1%, were actually disposed of. We work a lot with law enforcement, our partners MED and CDPHE, regarding unregistered and high THC flower. And we work closely with registrants and FSA, as I mentioned earlier, and we do send a lot of timely email blasts to registrants, including ones that are automatically generated to registrants to remind them to submit planting and harvest reports and things like that. And I don't know, hopefully you guys are all getting the newsletter, but I'm hoping the newsletters are providing important need-to-knows about compliance with the hemp program. We kind of did the same sort of research this year's, or outreach this year as we did last year. We were at NOCO again this year. We have a spring symposium, which is directed at both growers, testing labs, and authorized samplers. I had the privilege of attending the Cannabis Regulators Association conference in Atlanta last week, which is a collection of really my counterparts and other hemp programs and cannabis programs from around the country and several nations. And for the last 2 years, CDA has proctored a group, closed group, the Hemp Regulators Association, which has about 250 people in it, including most states and tribes in the United States. We did publish 4 newsletters this year. We have worked closely on our website to get meetings, need-to-knows, newsletters, things like that out. And this is our second Hemp Advisory Committee biannual meeting of the year. I'm going to talk a little bit about rulemaking, the timeline. I'm getting working with WanderAd and the department to get the red line or finalized for potential rule changes. We will engage you again. We'll try to do this as soon as possible, but I'm thinking the Ides of March, we'd like to meet with you again and show you what we're proposing as a red rule change. At that point, there'll be a rulemaking hearing in May with the Ag Commission, and by the end of July, the end of July or August at the latest, the rule changes will be effective. So I'm not sharing the actual rule document with you right now. I'm really just bulleting what we're seeing as challenges to the program. One challenge is the current definition of harvest. This definition, as it sits now, allows residents to remove the entire crop from the registered land area as a result of poor health, pest, disease, and weather events without testing and inspection. While the intent of this rule is good to avoid, culling plants and unavoided plant loss, it has resulted in people just claiming their crop was disposed of because it didn't succeed. And, we really would like to see more evidence of that. We only inspected 40% of everybody this year, so that means there were some people that upon inspection weren't able to provide that evidence, and the people that didn't get inspected, we are not entirely sure. I've reached out to everybody that didn't have harvest reports or report a specific harvest date and asked for evidence, so I'm working through them, or have worked through them the best I can, but I think we might need to tighten that rule up a little bit. We did change our policy, as I mentioned earlier, to have CDA on site to witness and supervise disposal of greater than 1% THC hemp. Our rules don't specifically specify that we need to be on site, so that might be helpful in the rulemaking going forward. We do have an exemption, or our rules do say that research institutions are exempt from pre-harvest testing. We still have the legal authority to inspect and test those folks, but it's not specifically noted in the rules, so we might need to tweak that one. And the last two bullet points are about costs that CDA is incurring. Our rules currently say that a registrant pays $125 per inspection plus laboratory costs. Because our rules don't detail or outline what the actual costs are, we're not able to do that, and we absorb those costs, and sometimes it's pretty significant if they have, for example, 12 lots or multiple lots. It can get to be quite expensive. I did a cost analysis recently that shows that the CDPHE certified labs are charging between $60 and $160 per sample. We certainly wouldn't want to go on the high end of that, I don't believe. It'd probably be towards the lower end. And it wouldn't recapture a lot of costs. We analyzed, as I mentioned earlier, about 45 samples. So it would be, what, $4,000 or less we'd recoup from that for the program. And one thing we'd like to revisit and possibly consider in rulemaking is, we've really encouraged institutions of higher learning to participate in research. And at one point in the program, it wasn't challenging or really a problem financially for the department to issue them free, no-cost registrations. However, we'd like to revisit that. One of my concerns about that is, if they can afford a $500 per registration fee, for example, and B, a lot of times administering the program for researchers is more difficult. They often have 26 or more lots that they're reporting and disposing of. They're going through, we're reviewing research plans for them. They take a different level of approval to do research. And they also have to do petitions for performance-based sampling. So that is something I'd like you to keep in your mind that we're thinking about proposing as far as rules are concerned. And I'd also like to cover, before we go into open discussion about all this, a recruitment of the HAC representatives. We did begin accepting applications this month. There was a press release about it. It's on our website under our general web page, Hemp web page, Hemp advisory committees. So if you know anybody that you think would be a good fit for that, please encourage them to apply. The ones expiring this year are Bill. Thank you for your service. You as well, Ryan, the commercial farmer. We'll be losing Rebecca after years of service. We'll also be losing you, Thomas. And the new term is set to begin on July 31st and will last for a period of 3 years minimum. So the deadline is really kind of flexible. At latest, I'd like to shut it off in July because we need to get these to the Ag Commission in July. Sometimes we've left it open longer if we don't have enough applications. However, the whole intent is to be able to get these in front of the Ag Commission by July and get them approved, as I said earlier. We need to get them in place by the end of July. So that is what the general timeline looks like. And I'll just briefly touch on challenges. This particular slide really hasn't changed much, I think, from the last time we provided this sort of update. I already mentioned about the cost of testing continues to be a pain point. Reporting for producers, the CDA and USDA hemp portals are confusing for some of our residents to use. And we are working closely with the labs, the CDPHE, to address delays and test results that need to be reported in both these portals by labs. We did provide additional sampling this year, or training for sampler guidance. Identifying and reporting fields in the CDBA portal seems to be sometimes a pain point for the certified samplers, which the training and future training should help. And the cost of sampling really hasn't changed much from the certified samplers. I think they start around $125, and for bigger grows, larger fields, or lots of lots, it can be at least $400. So our focus going forward is to continue outreach. In our last meeting, I talked about what a challenge this has been, and Sasha provided some input on that. Clearly, we still, after this year, some of the pain points we saw, we still need additional resources for hemp samplers. We were successful in improving compliance, or at least it got a little better this year with particularly hot THC. And we did crack down on indoor grows and higher risk growers this year. And we will continue to support fiber hemp, construction materials, and we have had a membership in the National Hemp Building Association to try to keep our fingers on what's going on there. And at this point, I can go back a slide or two if anybody has any specific questions about what I talked about. But I'd like to start an open discussion about what Wandrad was speaking of, considering the resolution bill. And what I've talked about with program numbers and rulemaking and HAC recruitment. Does anybody have a specific question about the federal hemp bill?
Actually, Wanderad, I had a question for you. Well, a couple questions, but I can kind of summarize them up into one. So I'm going over my notes. You had said that there's room, it sounds like there's room for future remediation. I'd love for you to elaborate on that. You were talking about the bifurcation. Do you have any idea what the downside of that and the trade-offs would be? Seems like there's going to be an issue at enforcement. How do we plan on handling that? But the big thing that I was getting, and maybe it was just the way you were explaining, you kept saying things like "we believe." Is there some language that's being used at the federal level that's leading the CDA to think that everything that happened with the appropriations bill, the language, there's going to be some changes made here?
Sorry. Yeah. Go ahead, Aaron. You
Yeah,
finished?
that was it. The language was very optimistic that, and the current administration is very good at kind of throwing something shiny and then switching it up the next day. So I'm wondering if that's what we're going to be seeing. Did they just need to get the House open or the federal government open, and we think there's going to be room for improvement, or is the language going to stick? What does we believe mean?
I think from what we hear, and then also I think I would what we heard, and then what the movement, and then all across the hemp stakeholders, there are definitely serious concerns, complaints on the current appropriation bill, and then that's the reason why also we see immediately the next day, and then there are number of bills that are introduced, and which basically to change the appropriation bill, and then particularly what's included. Number one is the principle of not, even at House or Senate level, no discussion was made, and then that's being the primary, reason. And then of course, because there was no discussion, committee level discussion, and then public hearing, and therefore that basically triggered that, yes, definitely, they will go back and then review again. But when they do work on it, what will be changed, or what do you expect? I think that's the real question, and then that's why basically one of the recommendations is to have a task force, and then hopefully that will really open up further deliberation, and then therefore the public, also all of us stakeholders, will have the opportunity to listen to, and then also advocate some policies through federal delegation as well. So having said this, I don't think that I said remediation. Probably I may misspelled or misrepresented. Not, the remediation aspect is what is already existing, and therefore I think I haven't seen any language or any reference for remediation. That means that here in Colorado, anything above 3.3, and then 0.5 or 0.6, definitely we give an option for a producer to remediate. And then we have seen also successful remediation that went down below 0.3% THC in dry weed when we retest. So that's already been available. And then so there are also different methods that's already approved in our state plan. The bifurcation is that hemp is now up 2018 Farm Bill, and then currently it's just industrial hemp or hemp is just one. That includes cannabinoid, and that includes also grain and fiber and seed. And therefore, if we bifurcate, and then what does that mean? That they are defined differently, and then also there will be also opportunity to regulate differently. Currently, the cannabinoids are, as especially the cannabinoid industry, they want to increase and maximize CBD, and then at the same time, chemically, biologically, the nature also, all cannabinoids increase. The risk of getting higher THC in the good cannabinoid or higher cannabinoid variety is high, and therefore that's where basically we testing need to be done to make sure that it's really below acceptable THC level. But on the other hand, if a farmer growing hemp for fiber, and then they use designated or known um, variety, and then when the germplasm is basically having a lower THC level, there is no need. What we need to make sure is making sure that they use that variety, the seed label, and then making sure, and then how it is produced. And this way, then they will be certified. Currently, through the performance-based sampling, we do have that provision, but it's very narrow. Brian, request the grower and then request us to submit, and then the burden is on us to really verify that they have used and then their method, and then most likely it will not really produce THC, but it is the department's responsibility, and therefore
So
that.
can I pause this for here, because I'm kind of concerned that this is where a disconnect is going to happen. Colorado is going to continue to regulate what happens in the field. This new federal language that we have to deal with, people in the language that people are reacting to, it really does focus on what happens when the crop leaves the field. The CBD is grown, Ryan does it correctly. The grower can do everything right in Colorado and still lose the market overnight because the end use just got riskier. So there's a multiplier effect here that it's a pressure test. The farmers are compliant, but the markets that kind of built this Delta 8 conversion, that's going to be collapsing. So can we ask Ryan, since Ryan's representing the farmers, and Ryan, I don't mean to put you on, what happens if that CBD demand drops because because people are scared of this Delta 8 issue that's going to be happening a year from now? What does that do to your acreage for this year?
Yeah,
no. What does that do for your contracts?
Yeah.
How are the genetics going to be planned for next year? I guess we ask Alex that too. Is the CBD demand for the last few years, is this going to be an issue?
Yeah, happy to talk about it. Thanks for giving me an opportunity here. So I've been talking about this daily for like the last month. Brian, I've called you. I've talked to a bunch of people on the phone. They're on the call here. Just so you guys know, like we're specifically cannabinoid farming, not fiber, but a bunch of you have been to our farm. Brian, you've been there. Derek, you're right down the street. So you've been down a couple of times. So you see what we're doing. Aaron, you've been there. We set out to grow this plant from a health and wellness perspective, and that's always been our mission and vision. So in a nutshell, I'll try not to get too long-winded, and I need to summarize my thoughts here. We basically lost all of our clients overnight. It happened instantly. Like that morning, the next morning, all of our contracts vanished for 2026. We had finally gotten to a point where we had started to stabilize after 5 years of investment fatigue and just blood, sweat, and tears. We were like, yes, finally things are going to start to go our way. We're getting contracts now. Industry's starting to mature. It's starting to stabilize. That was all just pulled away from us last month. In addition, we were working, this is actually probably more important. We were working on an acquisition that we had been working on for about a year and a half. Lot of energy, a lot of money, a lot of effort went into this acquisition. The night they signed that bill, the next morning, the banks called us that we were financing with, and they all said, we're out. So the acquisition got shelved. And this would have been a very good boost to the Colorado hemp industry. I can't go into it more than that due to NDAs and things like that. But anyway, I've had calls from Rolling Stone magazine, CNBC, local newspapers, even the CNBC cannabis and agriculture reporter didn't quite understand the magnitude of what this meant for us. So I had to educate this reporter on what just happened. And again, it's, like I said, we're looking at it just from the cannabinoid side, not from the fiber side. But the other thing that just happened, now is, and I'm curious to hear everybody's response to this, and I'll stop talking and let everybody respond. But now we've got this potential rescheduling to Schedule 3. And what is that going to mean? Because it's going to make basically all cannabinoids pharmaceutical products, and you'll only be able to access them in pharmacies or if a doctor prescribes them. And there's a disconnect there because the thought was that the reason this hemp bill went through in the first place was because alcohol wanted to own, they wanted to be able to, they were mad that, THC drinks were taking market share or whatever the reason was. But the fact still remains that companies like Anheuser-Busch still want to be able to produce THC drinks because it's becoming a larger market share. But this rescheduling will take that away from them because you're not going to go buy Budweiser with THC at a pharmacy. So there's a disconnect there. So I'm missing something. So right now, basically, we're in a waiting period. So if they reschedule to Schedule 3, chances are we will probably go for a DEA production license. That's the only way that I think we can make this work. Go ahead, Aaron.
So I would love to ask Alex. Alex is on the cannabinoid industry side. From what you're saying, it's clear that the demand for CBD is actually more associated with Delta 8. If that pathway is going to tighten up, what happens upstream? Exactly what you're talking about right there. I mean, and then we have to talk about the genetic side. So then there's, what do we do about certified seeds? Like, this is that multiplier effect that you're already talking about financing. The farms are going to be.
I'm in a second, but just to point out, like, our end buyers were not Delta 8 folks.
No, but it affected you directly.
It affects us directly, but like our companies that we're growing for are like companies that do pet products.
Yeah.
They're doing topicals. Like our number one client is Sombra, which is a 40-year-old topical manufacturer down in New Mexico. And they make that hot and cold therapy that goes on, patients in physical therapist office. They created a Sombra Plus line that's got CBD in it. They're our first and number one client. So we never set out to be in the Delta 8 market. I can go into a whole long dissertation about what I think about that, but I won't. So Alex, I'll turn it over to you if you have any comments.
Sorry, I was having a bit trouble getting unmuted. So I guess can you reiterate again the specific comment that you're looking for, Aaron or Ryan?
I was just wondering, I think it's fair to say, at least it seems like having these conversations, that it's kind of like this truth moment that we're seeing in the industry. There's the CBD demand is being crippled because of the association with the Delta 8. We've always known this. We've always seen this. They're tied together. As this pathway tightens up, the farms are going to start we're already seeing it. The farms are getting hurt. What happens upstream from here, from the cannabinoid side? How are we going to deal with this issue? Does that question make sense, or am I just?
So yeah, I get it as a general question. I guess I don't have a specific answer for it. I can give you kind of some theories or some pathways I think that could potentially exist. As you said, as we've kind of discussed, we don't have a final law at this point. We don't know, in what direction ultimately this farm bill will take us. We don't know if at this point marijuana is going to get decriminalized by the time this, could come into effect. And we don't know if someone's going to try to get the FDA to get involved, right, and create a legal pathway for something, say, like specifically CBD, or as we were talking about, the other cannabinoids that are not that are naturally found in the plant and simply performed through a regular extraction process. So to me, and again, I represent Hear Things as kind of the cannabinoid member, but again, as a reminder for everybody, I'm specifically not in the cannabinoid industry anymore. That's certainly where I got my background, and I certainly have lots. But again, what I would expect to see and what the main development of this, the result of this is, and what it came from is, again, that bifurcation of hemp, is to really make sure that we are able to have an industry moving forward for all of the other non-cannabinoid uses of hemp. And again, for full disclosure, I'm a member of the National Hemp Association. We were, key in not getting the bill that got put forth into place, but making sure that there was a carve out for industrial hemp, for non-intoxicating hemp. And that was very, very critical because that was a battle that could be taken at that point in time. And I think what we're talking about now, as far as what the future of the cannabinoid industry looks like, I just don't know that we have enough information right now. I agree 100% with you, Aaron, that we have an ability to craft that Colorado has always been a leader in a lot of thought and how these things should be implemented and executed. I know, myself going back to a cannabinoid producer, I've always had a great relationship with the CDA, and we've always worked very well to, grow the industry here in Colorado. So I'm hopeful, and I'm part of this, group because I want to continue to support that and see that happen. But I do think that potentially, again, people in the cannabinoid industry need to be prepared to deal with some setbacks, some additional challenges, while we potentially get to a place where we can get some more pathways for cannabinoids. And again, I could be totally wrong. Again, I'd be curious for the rest of the panel's feedback, but I think that it's something that has the full range of spectrum of something that we could get to very quickly, or it could be something that's very drawn out. And again, I think a big impact of this that a lot of us probably don't even realize is the potential impact of the rescheduling, because that also opens up a lot of changes upon which what I'll call methods upon which these cannabinoids can be made and produced. And so that potential descheduling has a massive consequence on the cannabinoid market.
Aaron, can I just add something real quick? Because I want to just talk about rescheduling and something that Ryan said, and that's moving to Schedule 3 does not automatically push cannabinoids to a pharmaceutical pathway, because there's still an IND process that exists within the FDA, and that doesn't go away if descheduling occurs. What I will say is that moving to Schedule 3 does allow for other regulatory pathways to exist. So it is an essential step, and I can speak to the CBD advocates, the patient advocates in the space, that there's a recognition that this needs to happen, as well as an agricultural bill fix that needs to happen as well. But so far to date, Congress doesn't entertain regulatory pathway bills that come about each Congress for a dietary supplement or allowing for access and regulation of CBD products. Moving to Schedule 3 might change that. And so it's not doing a lot, but it does start the initiative process. And then I will also say that the CBD advocates are also very hyper aware grow season is March, April, and that it's not the time to rest on laurels. It's time to act quickly to make sure that even if it's rescheduling occurs, that the next steps also need to occur very quickly. Bill writing, coming together, creating consensus. What do caps look like? What do serving sizes look like, and ratio and products look like? So that way, that growth season can start again, and these products won't be stripped from people because they're going to need their medicine in 11 months.
And I mean, honestly, I love that. I would love to hear John's thoughts. I would love to hear Bill's thoughts. I mean, what happens to the certified seed sector? This is that multiplier effect that I keep bringing up. If downstream conversion markets dry up, how much of that risk can genetics kind of step in and help manage that? This all matters. I'm wondering I know Bill's our cooperative farmer person. I'm wondering, are the growers actually clear on how much of their market is, we just heard from Ryan, how much of that is actually tied to Delta 8 end use? All this is going to be very obvious in the coming months, but we need to talk. We really need to address this now. Luckily, the change 330 days from now is after harvest, so we're kind of in the clear. But I think it'd be smart for us to address this now. I mean, Bill, John, I would love I think that's why we're here today. And if I'm taking up too much time, I apologize. But I just see an opportunity here to really kind of discuss everything that's happening.
Well, I sell to all the farmers in the U.S., And no one, I don't see anyone producing Delta 8. So it's just all basically, homegrown farms selling CBD to, people who
Conversion.
want it.
Yeah.
Yeah, as a medicine. So I don't know. It seems like just an attack on small farmers. Pretty much, we're probably producing the best flower on the market, and it's just getting taken away. So we are all united. I'm part of the United Hemp Farmers of America, so we have, I think, about 50 farmers on there. If you guys want to be added to that, please message me. You can find me on High Alpine Genetics, but we're figuring out what to do on our side as well, and they're trying to organize and collaborate with what they think they should propose, but I don't know if there's a clear pathway forward.
Yeah. Bill, do you have any thought? Is Bill?
Yeah, our genetics are zero risk. We're a certified variety. So as far as on the farming side, I've got no concerns. But on the product side, like the THC per container, stuff like that, that's a killer. So even this talk of rescheduling, I mean, we could switch our extraction to THC free and get rid of the THC molecule and finished products. But still, it looks like these new laws are going to impact those products anyway, even without the THC. Is that right? I'm not quite certain if this is just a THC problem, and if we get rid of it, we're good to go or not.
Yeah. Currently, it is THC, and then particularly container final product and then intermediate product restrictions are all on THC. And then, of course, other intoxicating cannabinoids are also included, but definitely it's THC and then others.
So if we're zero risk on the farm side and we do a THC-free extraction for our CBD products, are you saying that we should be good to go?
I believe so, as it is written. Yeah.
Interesting.
So I just want to chime in with something just to give some more color. Like one of the largest crude processor in the country is based in Montana. That's all they make is crude oil, and they sell it to all the manufacturers who then convert to either isolate or full spectrum or broad spectrum, whatever it is that they're doing. This cruding partner is probably the largest farming contractor in the country as well. I want to say they contracted for about 20 or 12 million pounds, I believe, in 2024. I think they got about 8 million pounds this year, and I think they were looking to double the 12 million pounds up to 24 million pounds in 2026. Because they're producing crude and it's an intermediary product, they can no longer, my understanding, they can no longer ship that product interstate. So they're now telling all their farms to prepare to plant other crops next year. So that's going to impact the seed genetics, however many tens of thousands of acres of hemp that would be normally planted under contract. Those farms are going to switch to either, I don't know, because, like even in Kentucky, like hemp was supposed to be the savior for the soybean debacle this year, which is then like that's ebbed and flowed as well. So I just don't know where this is going to land. And like I said, the language with this rescheduling has kind of added a new dynamic to the whole conversation. As of 4 weeks ago, all these buyers, all the people that the large farms sell to are saying, prepare to plant something else. We may see some language change. Maybe it's an extension on the moratorium on the January 30th continuing resolution bill. Maybe it's the Wyden bill gets through. Maybe it's the Griffith bill gets passed as a standalone bill. Who knows? The most likely scenario is we're going to see an extension, in which case at the end of January, farms may decide to plant again. So I feel like we're just in this weird period probably until probably the end of January. And then if nothing gets addressed at the end of January, there's another 3 months, which will put us to the end of April.
Which is planting season.
It's going to be too late to plant by that point. So
But I mean, this kind of raises, Ryan, what you're talking about is actually what, and Brian, chime in here. it raises that enforcement question. Brian, you brought up the pest issue, that there's no chain of custody declaration for pest contamination. I think we all know what that means for the person that was flagged. I'm going to jump out on a limb here, but chances are probably good that that farmer was like, I'm going to go sell this in the black market. There's no way to determine where this actually went, or maybe there was pests on the property and they needed to get rid of it really quick. But bad actors are then just going to be declaring kind of pest loss. Or are we going to be paying attention to this? Because if they're just paying a relatively small fine and they're diverting their high THC flower, which we know in the state of Colorado is total THC 0.87, blah, blah, blah. But what's to keep them from just moving into that area? It's a nominal penalty because we don't have a rule that really says, wait a minute, you disposed of your entire crop. Who's to say it's not crossing that border? I think we're going to be seeing more of this. And that hurts the entire industry at a different level. This is just shocking to me that we're at this level.
Surprisingly, there is no reaction raise hand function. What Colorado has been very proactive in this regard and then established a task force to basically work on the cannabinoid and then especially how to handle the intoxicating cannabinoid back in 2024 when the task force was basically working for, I think, 9 months. I know, Sasha, you were in that task force. And then what the state did was completely prevented any chemical modification. And then later on, the request was basically that because it's allowed in other states, so why do we prevent, our own manufacturers, producers, because the market is out there. And then that's where, the safe harbor basically provision was included temporarily, as long as there is market in other states, okay, we don't allow, but we don't allow sale of those chemical conversion and the Delta 8 here in Colorado. They are completely not allowed. And then, so I think it is in part a kind of reflection of, what we have done, but the way it is done, it's only prevention, but do not really outline or carved out how this could be regulated. What is the common sense? And then in a way of really implementing and then giving a clarity that it really did not really have. So I think in a way, when you look at particularly chemical conversions are completely bad. I think this will be, considered as either, I don't know, with marijuana classification or, different. I think we'll see sometime later on. But I think currently it's only THC. The way THC is a final product, definitely I think there is common, everyone, even those who are very much conservative in a way of protecting minors and then the public, 0.4 milligram per container doesn't really make sense. It completely is not, doesn't work. I think all others are, I think, with fine tuning and an institutional capacity and then clear guidance from the either fixing the current appropriation bill or farm bill, I think would really give it an opportunity. What we'll be advocating, I believe that we have not yet formulated, where do Colorado stand? But from what our federal delegation, they were in favor at the beginning, but later on, upon consultation, basically both at the Senate, opposed because of the lack of consultation, no committee review, and therefore this really has its own problem. When it comes to impact here in Colorado in the current cultivation, definitely it will have an impact. Definitely it will, but down the road, hopefully that there will be some adjustment in a way of how the industry really move forward. But currently we know that how the chemical conversion Delta 8 really went out of control. I think there is need to be agreed upon, well consulted federal legislation that could definitely address the issues. But if there is anything, I don't think there is anything we can do now, particular Ryan, the impact, what we have seen, it's really factual. It is definitely, what really happened. But hopefully it will really settle down in the future. But the way of bifurcating, I agree with the comments on the industrial aspect and then the cannabinoid. I think that in the long run, that would really pave a good path and then predictability and then avoiding risk of crop destruction. While it doesn't really make sense, if it do not go to the chemical or processing. I think CDPH is an authority here in Colorado. I think whatever we say in the manufacturing area, we definitely convey, and they are much aware of it. But here in at least at CDA, our major concern is how to make sure predictability for farmer, and then the program that we are responsible in terms of our rules. So the cultivation area is not much impacted, but whatever it is, hopefully it will be fixed, and then we'll also have a process during our consultation with USDA in our state plan consultation. So I think more to see, and then 1 year transition would give us, I think, opportunity to get this fixed.
So the CDA is going to continue with industrial hemp expansion. And at the same time, we're looking for kind of policy analysis that clarifies what's happening. Is that why you had brought up raising the limit to 1% on plants? Is that alleviating some of this for the farmers?
The 1% was, it is a proposal until hemp is well advanced, and then there are appropriate or enough varieties available for farmers to choose, and then the industry is well developed in a way of the different end users, so that the variety is destined to really meet that specific technical specification. Like if it is, for instance, textile, which variety is good? Do they have, they come with a little higher or marginal THC, or completely zero THC is, sufficient to satisfy that market demand? What about herd? How about, all other industrial or, bioplastics or any other use? This has not developed yet. So during this transition period, then allowing that 1% or higher THC would really create a room for the industry to catch up, to develop. But in the future, probably down the road, maybe it may not be necessary, because there is high risk. 1% THC, definitely there is a high risk of conversion to cannabinoid. Therefore, the burden is on the regulatory agency for us to make sure that no conversion. That's why, when Brian just reported this year, we intensified everything. Above 1%, we just made a policy decision that to witness destruction, so that to make sure that there is no conversion. Some of them were higher THC, and therefore definitely, there is a potential.
So is Rebecca on this call? Because I'd be curious from a research perspective.
Yes,
like
please.
what are the guardrails that are going to change with what you're proposing, with what the appropriations bill? I mean, is this going to change? Does this protect the research credibility that we've always kind of established here in Colorado? Is this something that we need to consider? We're also talking about the cost associated with academics. If we drop the $500 cost for hemp academia, if I'm understanding it correctly, it's per site, 500 per site, not just CSU pays $500. But is all of this going to change that? I mean, we do a lot of work on that side as well.
I'm on the call, and I love that you asked that question, and I'd love to hear the answer to it.
I'd love your feedback, honestly. What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, we're still trying to figure out how it's going to affect us. Obviously, if they're going to charge Is it per field? How does that look? It's going to affect us in different ways. But I would love to hear from Wanderad or Brian what they see coming in the pikes for us.
What Brian shared is our intent. Absolutely, we'll bring that to you with the red line, and then if we have to do, we can do it right now. Even originally, the intention was that okay, in order to encourage R&D, then we will waive. But currently, the program cannot run because of the financial deficit, and therefore, can we sustain that? And then if we cannot sustain that, then at least it helps. And then so how can we really balance? But we have not made decision yet. Then we'll bring it to you through rule change. So that's upcoming. But the area of 1%, I think it is just a policy recommendation, and then we feel that at this time we don't feel that there is enough choice, well adapted, and then that's really that can satisfy various hemp use. Not there are good varieties, zero THC or traceable THC varieties for various use, but given the high potential of hemp, we don't believe that there is not enough choice available. And because of that, that's why we advocate. But it's the industry as well. It's not necessarily ours, but we represent and reflect also various interests as well. But we'd like to hear any.
No, but I think the outreach right now matters more when the definitions are literally changing than when the rules are. And right now, academia, like the outreach to them, they speak to the rest of the communities as well. These are all big changes that are going to be happening, and it's just sitting in the air right now. And everybody on this call, there's a lot of that. Hemp is not just one sector. We're talking about big challenges, big changes, and being hopeful doesn't make sense. I'm hopeful that a lot of changes are going to happen, but we have to address these things. I think it's important that we address these things.
Yeah, Rebecca, just to clarify, I think what you were asking, we charge per land area. So for example, if I'm correct, CSU might have like 9 registrations, between, Pueblo and Upper Fort Collins and, the out west. And, we were thinking, well, what would happen if we charged them like we did everybody else? $500 plus X amount, $3 per 1,000 square feet. That's what we were thinking. What would happen if we did that? How would that impact the universities?
Thanks, Brian. And this is a conversation I will bring back, and knowing that my term is ending, right? I can bring it back, and maybe this will help entice someone else from CSU to want to get involved on the board and those kind of things. So.
As far as time's concerned, I mean, we're at an hour and a half. I love the open discussion we're having regarding the appropriations bill. I will just comment really quickly that when I was in Atlanta last week, I spoke with Norm Birnbaum with FDA, and he is very confident that they will be able to meet the deadline for the guidance the FDA needs to provide tied to the bill. He's got a list of cannabinoids ready currently, and I believe that's February 19th or 20th, one of those 2 days. And anyway, are we good with the discussing the appropriations bill? There was a couple other things. We actually touched on rules a couple times too. We were just talking about, potentially adding fees to institutions of higher learning. We touched on, again, I think Aaron talked about, the risk associated with farmers disposing of hemp outside the registered land area because they self-report that their crop failed or there was a pest or disease problem. Were there really any other comments or from the committee about these what I had mentioned?
I have sort of a comment that's kind of tied to it. If just to be direct and blunt, if we don't see a change in the language on this hemp bill, I think we're probably going to see a 60 to 70% reduction in registrations next year. That's just my gut take.
Mine too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's certainly there's a lot of fear right now with cannabinoid producers. It's been well voiced in Colorado and outside of Colorado and other states.
Oh.
You know, there's other states that are all cannabinoids.
You know, I would love to switch to fiber,
Yeah.
but where's the infrastructure? It's not there. You know what I mean? So it hasn't caught up yet. And it does like it fiscally, it just doesn't like commercially, it doesn't make sense for us to do it yet because I don't have 10,000 acres. You know, I've got 300,
Mhm.
you know, 100 max. So it just doesn't make sense with the way we're set up. So, you know, you have some people that may switch to fiber. But like for us, it doesn't make sense.
I don't think it will for most cannabinoid, like you mentioned. I mean, the big fiber growers we have pivots. You know, they're out east and they have lots of land to grow on. And they have proximity to where the processors are more so, like the eastern part of the state, southeastern part of the state.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well, you know, we had was there anything else from the committee? Like I mentioned, we'll be coming back to another meeting in March. I'll let you guys know as soon as I know when that is. The one I mean, there's certainly your input is valued the most. We do have still 10 people attending publicly. I saw a hand up earlier, but I don't know if we do have a public comment at this point. We do. Okay. So that is
Darcy, you can go ahead. I unmuted you.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. I'm Darcy with Vantage Hemp. Appreciate everybody's input on the appropriation bill. I had a question for Wanderad around your slide of intermediate hemp products. Given that the bill implicates intermediate products would need to meet less than 0.4 milligrams, is my understanding, correct? Or is it 0.3%?
0.3.
0.3%.
0.3%.
0.3%.
0.4 milligram is for final product.
Final product. So with the hemp biomass, if it's stored long term and the moisture content decreases over time, there could be a potential risk for the THC to increase due to the loss of weight. And in that case, would that be a potential implication for storing biomass in general and not meeting those requirements?
Thank you, Darcy, for your question. If I understand correctly, the testing is done at 12% moisture percent, and then there will be a drying process before testing, and therefore we assume that by the time it's harvested, and then as long as it's harvested within that time period after sampling, usually it remains the same. Once it's cut, everything should remain more or less stable, and then therefore, regardless of the dry weight, any testing will be done at standard 12%, and therefore it should not really impact particularly.
So that it'll still be maintained.
Yeah, it should.
And then additionally, I'm not sure if there's been any discussion, but with the appropriation bill, is there an intention to no longer continue with the safe harbor initiative that Colorado has in place currently.
Yeah, yeah, automatically it will, because it will harmonize the entire and then it will guide USDA, and then USDA also promulgate its rule, and therefore that will be the basis for state plan. Yes, there will not be any misinterpretation of one state allowing Delta 8 and then one do not. So that loophole will be closed, and that means that effectively the safe harbor will would be obsolete.
Okay, that makes sense. I think that's it for my questions.
Hey, Darcy, actually, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I know Vantage is or used to be like ICH Q9. So you have controlled storage parameters, correct? Like you have a chain of custody documentation, humidity, temperature, storage duration, all those handling controls, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Have you been seeing challenges in the state?
We have not personally seen that. I was just thinking, but that, if there is, as a supply, as a, an extractor, it might be advantageous for us to stock up on hemp biomass for the long term, given the uncertainty of
Yeah.
the agricultural industry. And then in that case, if we were to store it for, let's say, 3 to 4 years, we don't really know the implications of the drying at that long-term storage because we typically use this pretty quickly.
Yeah.
So I was curious if, if we're in Colorado, it is still plant material that has the capacity to dry out after you go through the curing process, if that would be a potential risk for us to utilize, despite that it was remain compliant at the time of harvest and curing.
Well, I mean, that ties in, and I'm just curious because I'm reading Brian actually brought up record keeping is kind of a problem with certifications. ICH Q9, it's critical to manage risk, but you cannot manage risk if you have not defined the risk. And the language right now that's coming out leaves you in the middle of nowhere. And that's what I was curious about, quite honestly. Like, how do you apply a risk management system when you don't have proper definitions? So, but it's good to hear that you're not running into those issues. I really appreciate it.
Not currently, but yeah, in regards to, long-term planning, one of the risks is that the supply chain for our starting material will decrease substantially due to this. So those are things that we need to start looking at and doing accelerated stability studies to see what the implications are for long-term biomass storage.
Yeah, and long-term planning is part of a mature market, correct?
Yeah.
That brings us back to market stagnation and immaturity, which we've been trying to fight in Colorado for a long time.
Yeah, but
it doesn't require a stable market.
Yeah,
we still do.
We still have our we still have a business to run and operate, and patients to deliver medicines to, outside of Colorado and outside of the U.S. So I was curious in that regard. And then in the safe harbor as well, it seems like it would directly implicate you if you continued that registration, considering the federal change. So I was curious as to how we would manage that as well.
Yeah. Mass balance. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Darcy.
Thank you.
I don't see any other hands raised. Does anybody else have any questions on the public side?
Do you guys have any questions?
Okay, I don't see any public attendees raising their hands. Brian? You're on mute, Brian.
All right. Well, I will move to conclude the meeting. I did want to give the panelists or the committee an opportunity for any final thoughts prior to reconvening in March.
Real quick, I would just say thanks so much to all of you for your perspective here. As a manufacturer, we're on the building materials side of all this. So we're working mostly with crop that is grown as a fiber to start. But my heart goes out to everybody, of course, that's affected throughout what's happening with these new regulations. And before I started this business in 2018, I was in dietary supplements for a long time, manufacturing and compliance. And it was challenging then sometimes to navigate just with supplement regulation and things that would come as curveballs. And so I hope that some sense is able to be made so it's not, just destructive or, too jarring to this fledgling hemp industry. And I know it's not as simple as for farmers if they're growing for CBD or cannabinoid to say, hey, just grow for fiber. I mean, that's a totally different market and, what's happening afterwards. On the processing end, though, we are working with some of the suppliers we know, processors in other states, to help get more fiber processing going here so we can help support, pathways for farmers to grow for fiber crop and have some viable, places to put that. But I just wanted to say real quick, thanks to everybody that was here and contributing to this. It was very informative for me, as a panelist.
Well, thank you, Derek. The bifurcation language, you probably haven't seen any impact on that yet for fiber producers that you rely on for material, have you? Yeah.
So he did.
And some of the sentiment from farmers that are into growing for fiber, for textiles and building materials, some of them have been very, adamant about being very delineated from cannabinoid. And so I think it would be extremely helpful to get some language together for some kind of fiber and grain exemptions, or just recognizing, it's a different, it's kind of a different pathway, and, maybe bring down some of the burdens that farmers face and people are faced trying to get the crop grown and taken to market, just reflecting what it's supposed to be. And I know the THC is definitely a sticky situation with, what's reasonable for consumables that are in the public, storefronts and gas stations. And it's kind of a murky thing. And I hope that cooler heads and reasonable heads prevail.
Yeah.
And just get a good, sensible policy.
He's been muted.
Gary, I 100% agree. I keep coming back to something simple, and anybody who's talked to me or knows me, I always talk about kind of theory of change, not as an academic exercise, kind of as a practical pathway. And I think we have that right here. We can define the outcomes we want, a stable, credible commodity, if we want to call it that, something that markets can trust. And then we can work backwards to design what the minimal rules are, the incentives, the controls that need to get there. We can do this right. It forces clarity on actually the changing behaviors that have kind of been forced on us, behaviors at the farm, processors, market level, instead of what we've been doing, which is relying on assumptions, kind of that one size fits all regulation that really is focused on agricultural production of CBD. Thanks for that input. I appreciated it.
Right. Well, I think probably the best thing to do at this point is, for us to start the rule promulgation process, red line, schedule a special meeting in March, and reconvene at that point.
And Brian, do you want to tell us, just remind everybody what that process looks like? It's been a long time, or,
Yeah, it's been a few years for me too. So basically
the role of our committee.
Oh, so yeah, the role, well, basically the role of the committee primarily is to provide advice to the department for all things regulatory, including rulemaking rules. And it's been, as you mentioned earlier, it's been several years since we've done any rule changes. So while the committee's been very actively engaged, we haven't had any rules to discuss. So that's why this, this term is so important right now.
Yeah, what I recommend is I think it's a good segue and a good question. Next time before as we start, we'll revisit what the engagements and then the roles, and then because from time to time it's good to refresh because meeting after a while, so that would be good. So I will arrange, and then I think Billy you can have basically cover on this as well. And then one thing just to ensure is if there is federal legislation and then most likely there will be a rule, a change in program or our state plan, and then we have to do, probably we may postpone the current rulemaking. So if we make that determination, we'll let you know ahead of time. But as it stands now, most likely we will go with a rulemaking change. But if we have to make adjustment based on the federal legislation and then down the road, USDA change, probably we'll let you know. So tentatively, just hold it for March, but may
But
change.
we will, Wanderad, we will be involved in any decisions that are being made with Colorado-based hemp, correct?
If we make any policy change or if you have to submit any comments for USDA, not comments, and then need to solicit the advisory committee meeting, yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And so, but I think now lots of things are going at the federal front. We are operating under USDA federal, program, so definitely that will affect us. So depending on what we do, we'll let you know. But provisionally, Brian, you can send us provisional or tentative, and probably we may call a little earlier or later, depending on the outcome.
Yeah, I'll get that out. I'll get a date determined soon, but traditionally we've met the second Wednesday of the month quarterly, so it would be mid-March sometime.
Yeah.
All right. So I will create a Zoom invite and we'll have to work on an agenda, which will largely just be filled with rules and reason for rule changes and that sort of thing. It's been a few years, so I got to get ready. Anyway, thank you, everybody. It was very engaging today. I appreciate the comments from everybody. I appreciate your engagement as well, Aaron, and of course, your input and engagement with Wanderad and I and Jessica as well. We appreciate it. And we will be in touch regarding next steps, okay?
Thank you, everyone.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Merry Christmas. Happy holiday.
Yeah. Merry Christmas.
Same to you, Wanderad.
Thank you.